does. Yay!
Now we're live. Hello, everybody. This is Vanessa and Velas's Blooped podcast live on Substack every Wednesday at 4 o'clock. And today, our guest of honor and my wonderful co host is Vanessa, who is going to give us a little bit of her origin story today and next week as well. So, very exciting. I'm really, really excited to jump right in and start wherever you want to start.
Awesome. And thanks for everybody. Nicole, hi Nicole. Hi Shri, Julie, Maya. Thanks for being here. Okay, I know it's kind of intimidating. Like, just start your origin story.
Yes, and go now. No,
so go.
I was born in. No, I know it's hard.
So I actually wasn't born in the Hare Krishna movement. My parents were very young. They were, I guess, 19 and 20-ish or right around there when they found out about the Hare Krishnas. And so I was essentially 2 years old when they joined. So I had already been named Vanessa. I had already, had a normal like childhood basically. And my parents were dabbling in, what was that movie in the 60s or 70s? It was like something about Jesus Christ Superstar or something.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I think that they had, so my dad, we'll go back a little bit. My dad is a musician, and he was one of these prominent musician guys back in the day. He was playing all over Boston and playing with some big people, and they were having a blast, he and his buddies. And they loved the Beatles. I mean, who didn't love the Beatles back then, right?
So were you born in Massachusetts?
I was born in Massachusetts. Yep. And so my parents met, let me go back even a little bit more. My parents met at a nightclub that my mom was the bodyguard or whatever. She was like the usher, and my dad and his band were the band guys one night. And my mom and dad met and fell in love. So that's the short version of it. So they were totally in the music scene. My dad's an incredible musician. And of course, they fell in love with the Beatles. It was also a sign of the times, like all this peace, love, and friendship. And also Indian music and Indian philosophy. So my dad, they started like being interested in whatever the Beatles were interested in, which was Indian culture at first. And then it became about the Hare Krishnas. There's the Beatles song where they chant the Hare Krishna mantra, and it, romanticizes the whole thing. So my parents were like, this is groovy, let's do this. And I think they were like doing acid or something when they were watching Jesus Christ Superstar, and they'd already read part of the Bhagavad Gita, and they were just like, okay, this is the life.
Little did they know.
So we used to actually go to Boston Common, and on Sundays they would have the big Sunday feast. They would have kirtan, which is, when all the Haris are bouncing around with their shaved heads and their drums and all their fun, cute clothing. And then they would serve out food, or prasadam, which just means food that's offered. And apparently I was a halva maniac. And so my parents said the reason they joined the Hare Krishna movement is because I loved the food so much.
Halva is made with butter and sugar and semolina, or cream of wheat, and it is pretty to die for. So
yeah, if we ever have like a blooped gathering, we'll totally make this.
We're gonna make halva.
Stuff our faces with it. I still love it today. Yeah. So my parents were just really smitten, and they weren't necessarily so deep into capitalist life that they were just like, this is too much. But my mom was a lifelong seeker. She grew up Catholic, and she went to St. Charles in Woburn, and she always felt like there was something more. My mom always had this existential bug. She's just like, I know there's more, and this isn't it. And so she really found something she connected with in the Hare Krishna movement. My dad didn't really care about it that much, but he cared about me and her. So his decision to join was based on just keeping his family together. They both got initiated by Prabhupada. Their names were Padma, which is like lotus flower, and Charna Padma. I don't know what the Charna means.
So what were their Karmi names?
Peggy and Charles.
There you go.
It was kind of cute.
So just if you're tracking, a lot of times, if your name starts with a specific letter, when they change your name, they change it to something with the similar first letter.
Yes. So my name was Vanessa. I was born, that's my birth certificate, it's Vanessa. And I guess Prabhupada gave me my name, which is Radha Manjari. And I'll spell it for you. Radha Manjari. Okay. And I went by Radhe for short. So that's how I grew up. Vanessa wasn't a name I connected with at all. I didn't have any early memory of it anyways.
Do you now connect with it?
You know, honestly, Vilas, I did. Okay, this is going to be like a little tangent off. So in all of my therapy, I always went into my therapy sessions as I was healing all this stuff as Vanessa. And lately, I really feel connected to Radhe. I feel like that's actually who I am.
Interesting.
And yeah. And I feel like that part of me, I no longer have to like shove in a corner or hide from or be embarrassed about. And so lately, when I talk to myself, my internal voice is like, hi, Radhe, I love you. You know, Radhe, you want to get up this morning? You want to go run? Like just the normal voice. I've been using that more because it feels more connected, actually.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of weird.
I wonder if there's something about our names having changed throughout our childhoods that makes us a little bit dissociative.
Well, I think that like my nervous system is connected to Radhe for sure. That was my early childhood, you know, from 2 years old on, I was Radhe or Radha Manjari. And so I definitely think that we're connected to it in some of our early wiring for sure. But I chose when I chose to go by Vanessa, it was more like a fuck you rather than I love my name. You know,
yeah,
I'm gonna use my Karmi name.
Interesting. When I went back to Velocity, it was a bit of a fuck you. But when I was Jai Radhe, it was a very rebellious stage. I was just like, I didn't like anything about that. And it was just this section of my life where now when I think back on it, I'm like, Jai Radhe, you know. So
Yeah, no, there was a time where I disconnected and I needed to, but lately in my life now I feel very healed about my childhood. I love Radhe. I love the little girl that she is and that part of me. So I feel like I just love her. And so I would be okay to be called, you know, Radhe or Vanessa. It doesn't matter anymore. Yeah.
So your parents joined in 75?
No, they joined in 74.
You said you were 2.
4 or 3.
Okay.
74, 73. In Boston initially. And then they pissed off all their parents and my grandparents. Changed my name, changed their names. It was really confusing. And then we moved to the Miami temple. Yeah, we lived in Somerville for a while, Boston, whatever. And then we moved to Hollywood, back to where my dad's family is from. He's from Fort Lauderdale. So at that time, what temple was it? It was Coconut Grove Temple was first. So if anybody has any memory of Coconut Grove Temple, man, that place is beautiful. For one, if you've been to Coconut Grove, it's just these big, huge banyan trees everywhere, and it's really cozy. It's almost like Hawaii-ish. So the location was magnificent. It was really cool. But that's where my brother was born. And once my brother was born, I was 3.5 when he was born. And then when I was 4, I think I was 4.5, is when I got sent away to school. So for the most part, I had intact grandparents. I had intact mom and dad and my little brother, and I loved my little brother. He was just like the cutest. Of course, he's my baby brother. And then it was literally from this family structure that I had, even though we were still in the temple, to going to Dallas.
So you were in the in the Coconut Grove Temple in Florida. And at 4.5, they put you on a bus?
My mother
dropped you?
jumped on a, yeah. So they were kind of convinced that, and we should talk about the motivation, right? They were taught or told that sending their children to Gurukul was good for the kid, was like, this is how they would learn to be good devotees or servants of God, if you will. And of course, that was the highest form of love. And my mom was very young. Both my parents were very young. My mom was particularly naive and really loved the idea of God and loved the idea of like a devoted, God conscious life that was superior to the material kind of mundane BS out there. And I don't think that's a terrible thought. It's just a terrible thought for a little kid. If you want to do that as an adult and go be a monk, fine. But I was 4.5, and I knew enough about love. I knew enough about family. I knew enough about mine to know how completely painful it was to be separated. So my mom took me to Dallas. We flew. And I remember sitting in the Dallas temple room with my mom. And this is the first, you could call it like the original sin, right? Or the original pain, was sitting in her lap at Mangal Arti time, which is like the 4 a.m. worship. And them telling her that I could not sit on her lap and physically moving me off her lap and separating me from her.
Saw that coming.
And I can still feel like that ache in my heart. Like I'm very affectionate and very like, if you're my people, you're my people. And I remember that feeling of just that first disconnect. And then it just never stopped from there.
So if you could put yourself in your mother's body for 1 minute and in her heart and soul, the way you knew her, the way you now remember and love her, what was she thinking in that moment that they just took her child off of her lap and it's the beginning of your indoctrination?
She was crushed. She said that she hurt so bad in her heart, like that broke her heart. But she really also thought or hoped that it would be the right and good thing. And as I know, my mom is a mommy type. I know that there was nothing in her body that thought that was actually right. She just was like in the system at that point and made that choice to just push through, to follow through on it.
And what was your reaction?
I cried. And I sat there and felt, so when I was little, I was like the girl that would just like my knees would bounce and I'd chew on the end of my braids. That's kind of when all of those neuroses, if you will, started. Because I had never been without hugs. I'd never been without affection. I'd never been without my parents ever. And I felt like that was scary for me. And it was, 4 a.m. So I was also really tired. And the reason someone was asking here, why wouldn't you sit on your lap? Because they were trying to disconnect you now from love of your parents, like physically, literally. The love and a connection and affection with your parents was Maya. And now it was time to feel connected to Krishna and God. And it was done. And I think it was very cruel, because again, I went from this fully intact family to now being in a Dallas temple where none of the teachers liked us. I mean, I remember being slapped. We were sleeping on the hardwood floors on these sleeping bags. We had no dressers. Like there was nothing of our own.
Were you in the main temple building?
God, I was so little. I don't know if it was the main temple or an adjacent building. I don't know the structure very well of Dallas. I went back as an adult to try to like recollect, put things in place. But I don't actually know. Good question.
So you go from your mom drops you off. Does she then leave and go back to Miami, or is she now there at Dallas?
Nope, she leaves, and I still have, I did a lot of EMDR on this, but I have this distinct memory of my mom leaving and getting into like the Hare Krishna typical van, like looks like a kidnap van, right? But they always had vans. But her getting into the van and leaving me there, and me standing on the in front of the Dallas Temple, like screaming bloody murder. And there was a vent or maybe an AC unit that I ended up just going behind and sitting there, and just I was hysterical. And that point for me was where I know if my son was crying like that, there's no way I would have left. There's no way I could have left, because I know, I mean, it was like terrifying because I don't know anybody, right? And she literally, that was the first time she walked away from me. And then it continued. There were so many other times that she walked away from me, and that kind of set the tone. Even though I would go home in between Gurukulas, that broke it. That broke me, and it broke the connection between us.
So you're 4.5 and you're new to the ashram, and what did your like daily life look like when you woke up in the morning for Mangal Arti at 3:30 to get there by 4? Tell us your day.
So 3:30, we would wake up in the morning. We would take cold showers. We would get dressed. In Dallas, we didn't necessarily wear little saris. We had skirts and little
house on the prairie outfits.
Little house on the prairie outfits. So they're little headscarves. I think I have some pictures that I'll post on here too. So we'd go to sit in the temple room with all our friends, and we'd worship the deities. You know, it was a pretty prominent altar, and the big marble deities. And then I don't remember, I think it was like Mangal Arti and then Tulsi, the Tulsi
Puja.
circle.
Tulsi Puja. Mm-hmm.
And then we'd have lecture, which, you know, when you're 4.5, 5 years old sitting through a lecture, I was just like, yeah, snore fest. But it made me really anxious, and I had a hard time. You know, I was like very bouncy kid. So then we would have like another kirtan thingy, and then we'd have breakfast. And so breakfast was like all of us sitting on a floor in these big lines. And Vilas, I think you have some pictures of the Dallas Temple of what it was like to like eat together. So the benefit at least is that it was communal eating. We weren't sitting by ourselves. We weren't, you know, but we were all eating together, and whatever slop they made for us that morning, whether it was oatmeal or whatever slop they would make. And then we would go into like our studies. So we did have school. So I had math class, I had reading class. I think we had recess. I distinctly remember math and spelling because I loved those both. So, and then after that, it would like go back to the ashram. You'd have to clean, you'd get ready for bed again. And in between all of that was always like the drama, right? Someone would get in trouble, someone would get in a fight. You'd talk back to your teacher. I, for some reason, had a very slappable face. So that was a very common occurrence where I would, you know, get slapped for whatever, you know, asking questions, being loud, being silly, you know, saying something that was quote unquote offensive. So.
And so how long were you in Dallas?
So I was only in Dallas for a few months. I didn't know why I left Dallas, but apparently the school was closed for reports of child abuse. So I don't know if my mom came back to get me. Actually, she didn't come and get me. Me and Purnima actually flew out from Dallas on our own back to Miami, and our parents picked us up at the airport.
Do you have any good memories of Dallas? Any experiences that you were like, all right, this is something that I'm going to remember retrospectively now for the rest of your life? No.
Nothing good. Dallas was very lonely. It is where I first met my friend, Madhava. So like I could say, we're still friends. And I think, gosh, I can retrospectively say that was good. That's where I met her. But I don't have any good memory. Before the day I was leaving for the airport, I had a math class in the morning, and my teacher threatened that if I didn't write my number 3 correctly, because I would write it backwards, I got my 3's and E's mixed up, and threatened that if I didn't get it correctly and I didn't pass, I wouldn't be able to go home and see my mom.
I'm sitting cross-legged on my chair, just in case you're wondering. I'm sure you are too.
Yeah.
Because we don't know how to sit any other way.
No, we're just conditioned. We're just conditioned to it.
And what was your worst memory of Dallas, if you don't mind sharing?
I mean, my worst memory of Dallas was being left there, like standing there looking at and watching my mom walk to the van and leave me. Like, imagine your little, you know this, but anybody out there, you know, you leave your kid in daycare for the first time and they flip out. I mean, but you know you're coming back, and eventually they know to trust you. I think that was such a bottoming out feeling. And listen, I was really happy to see my mom when I saw her again. You know, little kids are really forgiving until you're not, until you recognize that there's a pattern. And there was one instance in Dallas where one of the boys, was his name Krishna Das, I think. I don't know what he was older than me at the time. And my hands were in the doorway, and he smashed the door on my hands. Now, this is weird, mean little kid stuff. I don't really know like what the context was, you know, but that was probably the second worst experience there. But I was slapped by the teachers, but I don't have a visceral memory of that as much as I have the visceral memory of like my mom leaving, and then that experience with one of the boys, like just smashing my hand. Now, I know that there were kids that were put in washing machines in Dallas, that were locked in basements in Dallas, in closets. I'm very thankful was not one of those kids.
So do you think your time, even though it seemed short, do you think that it caused a certain amount of damage going forward for the next several years, or were you able to like forgive already once you left Dallas? And
I would have been able to forgive Dallas had it been a one-time experience. I would have been able to go home and just now been with my parents and my grandparents and kind of come back to my life. 100% would have been okay. But Dallas ended up becoming a pattern, right? The next school. So I went home. This time my brother's a little older. He's still in school. We get to hang out. So we lived, by this point, we moved from the Coconut Grove Temple to Numayash. What was it called? Numayashwar? Oh God. Anyways, it was a South Miami temple. It was close to University of Miami in Coral Gables. And God, the property was amazing. There was a lake, mango trees everywhere. We had sugarcane fields. We grew marigolds. The property was really, really cool. And we had our own little trailer at first, like this creepy blue trailer. And then another part of the property we eventually moved to. So, and my grandparents lived in Fort Lauderdale. So it felt like still safe to some degree. The problem that I started to run into was that like anybody in the Hare Krishna movement who had a daughter and a son, now there was favoritism towards the son because he was a boy. And so at 7, I started to recognize, or 6, started to recognize that favoritism. And so before, where I was like the apple of my parents' eye, all of a sudden I wasn't. And it wasn't because I did anything wrong. It's because I was a girl. And all of a sudden I had to be covered and I had to clean and do all these weird girl things, where my brother now was this exalted little creature because he was a boy. And so that to me was very psychologically hard, because prior to all their bullshit, I was like number one. And then it would have been fine for me and my brother, but then there was this heavy favoritism. So not just like sibling rivalry, which was normal, but the denigration, both of my parents now putting me down because I'm a girl and telling me I can't do things because I'm a girl and he's better because he's a boy. I think that stuff was really, really hurtful.
It always boggles my mind, and at the same time it doesn't, the different treatment that boys got versus girls. And it wasn't necessarily that the boys got treated better.
They didn't.
Right. But they were more coveted and they were more wanted. It's almost like they're a piece of shit and you're literally nothing. Yeah. So it was so bizarre, because I'm like, well, if boys are so wonderful, then why aren't they treated better? And they weren't.
They weren't. Right. My brother suffered also. I mean, I can't tell his story, but I can say that it's not like it was easier. It was just like, in my parents' eye, that was all of a sudden this favoritism that hadn't been there before. But again, I still love my brother. He was still adorable. He's this little cutie pie. But what I did notice is when I came back from Gurukul the first time after Dallas, my mom always was sad. I have these distinct memories of my mom being sad and crying a lot, and she would lose her shit like really fast. So if there was any type of me being a little brat at 4 or whatever, her favorite thing became smacking me in the face, like literally, like welts on my legs, welts on my face. And so there was this, it turned after the Hare Krishna thing, after they joined, there was this constant physical hitting, even from my teachers and when I got home. And it wasn't from my dad. It wasn't from anybody else. It was literally like my mom got impatient, whack, me overcrying or whatever. Part of the 70s movement was like, if you don't stop crying, I'm going to give you something to cry about, or whatever that stupid saying was.
Yeah. Well, and it was culturally acceptable when we were younger to hit your kids. And it's less so now. It's still not illegal.
Yeah. No, I've had to do a lot of like physical healing work with my nervous system because I was smacked across my face more than I could have ever imagined. I can't even imagine hitting a person like that, right? But
yes, every time you would go to jail. It is illegal to assault another person, but it's okay to beat the shit out of our kids.
Yeah. No, it was intense because I'm also a little, how I am as an adult is how I was as a kid. I'm kind of like just silly and dorky, and I'm not really a violent person. And so to be just like batted around by people like that was kind of intense. And it was my mom's, I know now that it was my mom's heartbreak that started to kind of internally enrage her. She was really unhappy about a lot of different things. She never could find like her peace. And so I think she had a really hard time in the temple, but she had a hard time leaving the temple. She had a hard time in her marriage with my dad, but it was harder when she left. So it was just her internal system that was very conflicted. And as loving and amazing as any of you know my mom, she was also amazing. So it made it really, the relationship was very confusing because she was also the next person or the only person that ever literally dropped me off at school. And so the next place she took me to was Seattle. And Seattle was what like cut me off from her pretty significantly. So
and how old were you?
I was 6 then.
Okay.
Yeah. Now we continued a relationship. Obviously, she's my mommy. But when I look back and I think about my own internal heart and where the break came, the earthquake happened. So she dropped me. I had about 1.5 years or another year or so of just being home with my parents and my brother and doing our thing. And then I went to Seattle, and she dropped me off in Seattle at a park. So do you remember Satya? Some of you guys know her, Satya Britton. She's in New York. She was my guardian angel, man. We were sitting in the park playing. We'd all walk together to
She
the
was
park.
my best friend in Ginagri.
She was?
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
That girl has a heart. She's a little angel, that
I
one.
just saw her a couple months ago, right before her birthday.
Okay. Oh, I love that.
I was just up in New York and I saw her. Yeah.
Yeah. So she was, I think, 8 or 9 at the time. And my mom dropped me off at the park. We were all playing and she walked away. And again, going to this creepy ass white van. And I cried so hard that day that Satya, like, just literally grabbed me and sat with me in the sand under the monkey bars. And she just held me for who knows how long. And my mom took off. And for the life of me, I still don't, I understand my mom now. And I do forgive her, but I go, damn, that, honestly, I think that probably damaged her more than it damaged me. Because I've had a long time to kind of heal from it. I think my mom...
I haven't, so I don't forgive her yet. We'll work on that.
And that's okay. Yeah. I mean...
I'm mostly...
I know. I have no choice but to forgive her. And the truth is, I read my mom's diary after she passed. I only found this diary a couple years ago. And in the diary, she said she can't believe how little we were and how sorry she was for what happened. So I got my apology, and that's all I ever needed. I just needed to know, like, was she really sorry for sending us away? Because we were in such an unprotected space at that point. As you know, Seattle, I mean, we had Pajavali, we had Lakshmi Moni, we had some people there that were
monsters.
Monsters. And it was women. I mean, I don't know where the men were in all of these stories, right? But
well, we were segregated from men, so we wouldn't have known boys and men were in a separate ashram situation.
Yeah. So Moksharupa, she was very violent.
Yes.
Her favorite thing was to smack you across the face. You didn't clean the bathroom right, smack you across the face. You didn't say your rounds properly, smack you across the face. You talked back or asked a question, smack you across the face. I mean, it was like literally we were hit. I think all of us were hit once or twice a day. And so the things that I remember about Seattle were, I was on the phone one day. So I'll go back a minute. There were we're all really little, like 6-year-old kids separated from our parents. Of course, we're peeing in our beds. So we're sleeping on floors in these sleeping bags. And I think 5 of us had actually wet the bed that night for some reason. And the punishment was to wear the urine-soaked underwear that we had slept in on our heads and get a bucket of cleaning supplies and wash the floors where we had slept and made our messes. And I mean, that's pretty humiliating to do that. And I think the harder part was, obviously it was hard for you as a little kid, for me anyways, and like urine-soaked underwear in my head, like that's really weird. But to also witness the other girls that had to do that and to see them crying and to see them confused and hurt. So the abuse that we endured, it's one thing to have it done to yourself. Like I can handle mine, right? I got to deal with my stuff. But now I'm in a room full of my friends who I love. And we're sisters at this point. And they're dealing with this. And so that, I think, was really hard to see.
Well, there is legit trauma that happens to even the person who might not be being physically abused themselves at that moment, but to witness it and to be right next to the other person. And I think that it really does take a toll, even if you're like, well, it never happened to me. Like Nirmal always managed to escape because his father was the minister of education, but he got pretty traumatized by being next to his friends who were being horribly violated in every way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's something really, there's something to that. I mean, you probably see that in war zones or people that survive or people that see other people being very soon, severely damaged. It's not like I don't feel like it was a guilt, like a survivor type guilt, but it was just this deep empathy and anger, and it did come out at one point, right? It came out a couple years later, but it was like, oh, watching my little buddies be hurt it was intense. And Seattle, I really think was like, the people in Seattle were pretty demented. There was a woman one of my ashram teachers, I couldn't eat okra. So we'd sit in these long lines at dinner and have these really weird subjis. And sometimes it'd be like bananas or raisins and potatoes, or okra and raisins and tomatoes. I mean, just
disgusting.
So disgusting and weird. And I threw up okra one night. And my teacher told me that that throwing up my okra was offensive to Krishna because it was offered. Mm-hmm. And she made me eat my throw up.
Yep. Heard that coming.
Yeah. And, I mean, I guess I'm pretty fucking resilient because there's a lot of like humiliation going on through these people. But
do you think you implied coping mechanisms even then, or was it later that you start? Because I didn't. I was just like, just kick your feet and paddle really hard and try not to drown. But I didn't have a concept of coping or being resilient, or I was just like, just make it to the next day, for fuck's sake.
I have a pretty strong internal sense of right and wrong. And I also have a very strong internal sense, like humor, but that didn't really come out until I was like 8, until my brother came to school.
Your brother came to Dallas?
No, he came. So it was Dallas and Seattle.
I mean Seattle. Yeah.
No, he came later, but I turned 7 in Seattle. There were some other things there that were really weird. Like Pajavali would make us, when we would walk to the park from our ashram, she would make us do dandavats in the street. And dandavats is where you like lay your whole body down on the floor and pray.
Face down, forehead on the ground, completely prostrate yourself forward. Dandavats.
So we would be walking to the park. There was a beautiful park in Seattle, but we'd all be like walking in our little house on the prairie outfits, and then she'd be like, make us lay down in the street, face down. And so we're a bunch of weird fucking little cult kids, like, okay, and this scary lady dressed in orange and her stick. I mean, she just looked like the devil. So there were just very weird things that happened in Seattle like that were just kind of continuous. I turned 7 in Seattle. And I remember that because my mom had sent me a package of clothes, and I had a birthday cake. And I remember then that all the underwear and socks that I was sent were sent into the community drawer rather than.
I was going to say, did you get to keep them?
Nope.
Of course not.
I had a couple saris that were mine, but that was it. So yeah. I think it wasn't until I got to Philadelphia where I think Philly was like the next school. God knows why I was there. I don't even know why I was there. But that's when I started really falling in love with writing and language. And I started really falling in love with words. I would make up secret languages, and I would study the dictionary like it was like this, ancient text, and started to feel like something of my own. And my personality was more like me, like I can trace back who I am kind of to those moments. And I started writing letters, and I'd write my parents' letters, and I'd write the guru letters. And my letters would always be returned. I always had to change what I was writing because I was being affectionate, or I would say, I love you. And I would have to take all of that out of my letters.
So I would send my mother letters and she would red mark them and send them back with misspellings and grammatical errors.
I swear to God, people should have a certification for being parents.
Yeah.
Yeah, my letters were covered in butterflies and hearts and flowers, and I was always trying to be the good daughter and the good devotee and the like, you know. But I was always corrected. They'd take my stuff out and say, Radha Manjari, you can't say that, and Radha Manjari. So full on censorship. But I have a natural FU tendency in me. I have a very natural, like, this doesn't feel right. And so then the next school was Tennessee. And Tennessee was a time where I was 8 by then, and my brother was 4. And my brother got sent to Tennessee. And I was told by the ashram teacher that I was in charge of him because I was his sister. So I became the little mama and bathed him and made sure he ate. But what was interesting about him coming to school is I had endured everything from 4 to 8 by myself. I was, this little kid trying to swim upstream, and I felt very victimized by everything and very vulnerable up until my brother came to Tennessee. And then once my brother came to Tennessee, he and I were really, really close. We did everything together. I took care of him. We played, whatever. When he was sick, I cared for him. I have a memory of him being really sick and sitting on the side of the mountain holding him because he had a fever. And I just was holding him until he felt better. And then we walked back up to the ashram and put him in bed and got him whatever. But this is what was really interesting in the ashram. Is when my brother and I started getting close, or because we were close, we'd also get into trouble, and we'd gang up against the other kids a little bit because it was just me and him and a little team. And that's when they really started to fuck with me. And then they separated me and my brother.
Well, I was about to ask you, it's interesting that they yanked you off your mother's lap in Dallas when you were 4, but somehow they're letting you love on your little brother.
Well, they didn't want the responsibility. That's all it was. It was, here's the sister. And I'm a very
nurturing.
I'm not a passive person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm nurturing, but I'm not passive. I'm territorial. I'm extremely territorial. If you're mine, you're mine. And so I wasn't oh, that's my brother. It was that's my brother. And so I think they just thought okay, well then you're in charge of your brother. You make sure he's fed, and you give him a bath, and you dress him and get him ready for bed. You get to do the little Mataji thing. And I was fine because he was mine, so I was all right, I'll do this. And because we were close and we'd have fun together and we were running around together and I was excited to show him all the things, that's when they separated us and wouldn't let us hang out, wouldn't let us spend time together. And that's really when that's when I woke up. Because before that, I was in the little kid fog, and I was still playful and silly despite all the things going on. But I wasn't you guys suck. And so by the time I had turned 8, that's when I turned into a warrior. And that's when I started talking back, questioning everything, watching things differently, saw things differently. And then by the time we went to Lake Huntington, which was a year and a half from that. So we were 10 by the time we went to Lake Huntington.
Which is in Pennsylvania.
In New York.
New York.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. By the time we got to New York, I was full on, if you ever touch my brother again, I'm going to beat you up. If you hurt me, I'm calling the police. We're all running away. That's when I descend from 8 to 10 was kind of my awakening. And by the time I'd gotten to Lake Huntington, I was what you would call uncontrollable. And so
Congratulations.
Yeah.
So do you, and Lake Huntington kind of got, I was in Gita, which is in Pennsylvania, when the other girls were in Lake Huntington, and we used to get together sometimes. And I kind of got the impression that it wasn't that awful.
So awful is relative. It's not as awful as Kirtanandis. Is that the guy's name?
Yeah.
Krishna, or some of those people. So I would say for me, it was more, by now I was very aware and very, very vocal. We had recess. We got to eat popcorn. I mean, we had wonderful Sunday feasts. They were great. But I had Lakshmi Moni for a teacher.
Again. Oh, shit.
And there was another woman, I'm not going to say her name because I actually love her, but she was actually kind of rotten when I was in Lake Huntington. But I love her, and so I'm just going to leave her on the side. So I don't know why I can forgive her, but I love this woman very much. And she was still rotten, but she was still one of these people that I just like, I forgive you. It's okay. Because I don't think she actually has a mean heart. I know she doesn't have a mean heart. I think she's one of the most amazing women I've ever met. She just was shitty for a period of her life. But Lakshmi Moni was not. I mean, that woman was straight up
evil.
Not. She was. So for me, I had friends. I still laughed. You'll still see pictures of me having fun. But being told, like, I got my period at 11. And we were told that, all of a sudden I was an adult. I wasn't able to go to recess anymore. So recess was taken away. So it just meant my hour or two of like playing had to go be to service and to go clean. To me, that's abusive. Like, I don't know if anybody else would relate to that, but to me, that felt it was isolating. It was humiliating, and it felt preferential. Again, like the boys didn't have to have no recess. And what does dirty mean? Like, what does cursed even mean? I'm bleeding, then it hurts. Like, what are you talking about? So for me, it just felt there was such a culture of disrespect. And that's, I think, what I experienced a lot of. And then there was, again, Lakshmi Moni was constantly berating me. I was constantly told that I was less than, that I was bad association, humiliating me.
Shri said off the altar. So if you had your period, you weren't allowed to go to the temple. You weren't allowed to, be present in front of the deities. And and off the altar.
Yeah, that's a good word. And we weren't allowed to wear red and black, which were my favorite colors. My favorite sari was red and black. And they said, if you wore red and black on the first day of your period, you're going to have something bad's going to happen.
Well, in the past 49 minutes since we've been chatting, I have thought 3 times at least in my head that I need to find a way to work in religious indoctrination to children is child abuse. It should not happen. Leave it off. Let them figure it out. Let them find out who they are first. Self-love, just love, and good for goodness sake. If they choose to pursue some sort of a spiritual path when they're old enough to understand. Thank you, Julie. I appreciate that. I just, it hurts more than it benefits. It's really damaging.
Well, and I think the hard part is that by the time I was 10, so my girlfriends, we're all in the 10, 11, 9 to 12 range, right? And we're very conscious of being separated from the boys. We're sitting in the back of the temple room. We have to keep our heads covered. We cannot go and drum with the boys. We can't go dance with the boys. You have to cover your belly if you're wearing a sari, because some fucking 20-year-old, 30-year-old brahmachari might see your 12-year-old stomach and want to be lusty and do something to you. So the things that I found the most offensive about my childhood were being continually told that we were less than, shown that we were less than, treated and talked to like we were less than. We were berated constantly with these intellectual religious conversations where we're told men are better, men are smarter, women are weaker, women are less, women are frivolous. Smaller brains. I mean, it was just constant mental and emotional stress. And as a person on the receiving end of that, that's really, really, like, you can feel it in your system. And my system was just constantly like, I'm not bad, I'm not weak. And I remember thinking, my mom's smarter than any of you fucking brahmacharis or men here. And so that's where I found some of the harshest disrespect, was just this beration constantly. And I got tired of it. I also got tired of hearing crazy things that were happening to my brother and the boys. And so at one point this is what kind of this is where things changed. There was one day I had walked out, I was bouncing. I didn't like the lecture. It was one of those lectures that was like really telling us how stupid we were and how our lives were meant to be in service to men. And that men were like butter and women were like fire. And I remember having so much anxiety in my body that I couldn't sit still. And Lakshmi Moni was like, well, you should get out of here. So I left. So what happened was, you're facing the temple, like when you're in a church, you're facing the front. I turned around and turned my back to the temple or to the deities. And Lakshmi Moni came charging out after me and punched me in the face and and messed up my jaw. She knocked my jaw out of place. And it felt like someone had just taken like a concrete brick and just smacked it across my face. And in that instant, I looked at her and I did not do anything, but I started laughing like a psycho. I just was like, I knew that the only thing that I could do in that moment was make sure she understood that there was no way she was going to get to me. And I probably, like a Joker moment, I just like burst into laughter and was hysterical laughing. And it took years. I had my jaw fixed years later when I had braces and everything. But that moment, like, pretty much cracked. I was done. And so conversation.
And how old were you now?
I was 10. Well, no, I was 11 at that point. I don't know if I turned 11. I was 10, between 10 and 11. And it wasn't shortly after that they had asked me if I wanted initiation or if I was going to get initiated. And I remember, and I said to the gurus and the people, like, I am 10 years old and you want me to make a lifelong decision to not have sex, not eat meat, not gamble, not do any of these things, and change my name and submit to a guru. I said, I'm too young to make big life change decisions like that.
How did you know that?
I just knew it. I think that by now, I had such a strong sense of myself. I don't know where it came from. I think it was always there, and the movement just cultivated it even more. But I knew, I was like, no way.
Is that what you would attribute how you survived? Is you holding on? Because the objective of religions and cults, obviously, is to separate you from your core, from your gut, from what you know is right and wrong, because they want you to agree and believe what they believe is right and wrong. And you shouldn't have a different opinion than that. And if you do, we're trying to wipe out your personality. But you seem to have just held on to your personality, and you didn't lose it.
I didn't. And it got stronger and stronger and more defined as things happened. So at one point, I had organized a group. So my brother got hurt. We couldn't find him. And I was so angry that I had gone to the other woman that I didn't mention her name, but this other woman. And I said, give me a phone. I'm calling the police. I am charging all of you with child abuse.
How did you know that?
I don't even know. I literally don't know. But I remember the feeling of like, give me the police. I am charging you. Like I was screaming at the top of my lung in the Prasadam room in Lake Huntington. And I didn't care who heard me. I didn't care what happened. And she came running out and she's like, what happened, Rade? What's going on? I told her everything. And I was just spewing at this point because I was like, you're talking about my brother who is lost and there are bear traps out in the woods and there's bears and like, oh my God. And my mother wasn't around and my dad wasn't around to protect him. Like who was looking out for him? Who knew he was gone? No one. And nobody gave a shit. So it was like completely like something I tapped into that I honestly think I tapped into love. I tapped into like that warrior spirit inside that said, I love this person. I love myself and fuck everybody because I can tell what you guys are doing is not love. And that was very clear at that point. And then that's kind of where Lakshmi Moni, I organized a runaway group. We called it RAGS for Runaway Girls. It was the acronym was Runaway Girls. And I had everybody collect their popcorn from the night before, a pair of underwear. I think we actually saved our apples from dinner. And I said, listen, we're all running away. We're done with this crap here. And I drew a map of how to get out of the temple or the ashram, go over the creek, go up the hill. And then I was like, I know there's a neighbor's house here. We're going to go to the phone and we're going to call the police. And so this one night we all saved our food and put it in our little bags at the end of our sleeping bags. And we were dressed and everybody, there were like maybe 5 of us. I don't even remember how many of us agreed to run away. And I had my little map and I was ready. And around 7 or whatever time it was, and we thought all the ashram teachers were asleep, I walk out into the hallway and I have like my little crew behind me and I hear Radha Manjari.
Busted.
We were so busted. And at that point,
you know, like one of your other prisoners there narked on you. That's what happened.
I'm sure that's what happened. I was so disappointed, but it was the next day and the following that really was defining because Lakshmi Moni brought me into her office and she was like, why are you trying to run away, Radha Manjari? And why are you whatever? And I just looked at her and I was like, I don't know. And that became my defense. I would just literally stare at her in the eyes at this point because I didn't want to talk to her. And I'd be like, I don't know. Every single thing she asked me. And it would infuriate her. And at one point I said, I want to be a karmi. Because I knew that was like the worst I could say.
Oh, you said that? You said, I want to be a karmi? Wow.
Yeah. So I got kicked out of Lake Huntington. I got sent to my mom in Florida. That's a whole nother story. She was exiled from the Florida temple. So we ended up in the Alachua temple. And in the Alachua temple, this is where we'll end my story. In the Alachua temple, Nanda, who was her guru, he proposed the solution to my uncontrollable nature was to get me married to somebody. And so one day I came home and my mom handed me an orange basket of orange laundry. And I looked at her and in the Hare Krishna movement, if you're doing someone's laundry, you're their wife. So they just thought I was a stupid kid. She hands me this basket of orange clothes. And I looked at her and I said, you want me to get married? And she goes, how did you know that? And I said, Mom, Mata, you don't ask a woman to do laundry for someone that isn't her husband. I am not doing this guy's laundry. That turned into a whole conversation and her trying to convince me that I should be married to this guy who was, I don't know, 29. I think he was 29 at the time.
That's disgusting.
They took me to Disneyland. Is that the one in Orlando? To Epcot Center. Sorry. They took me to Epcot Center to try to bribe me. So my mom and this guy, Jatayu. So we go to Epcot Center. I'm in a sari. He's in a dhoti. She's in a sari. And I remember sitting on this bench right in front of, what's the mountain ride?
Magic Mountain?
No, it's Stone Mountain. I don't know. It's like this crazy ride. Sitting there, and Jatayu said to me, he's like, "You're going to be the star of your school." And I was like, "I already am. Everybody from here to Europe knows who I am. So I don't need you." Another part of the conversation, he told me that I would be able to eat as many, because I love cookies and I'm kind of known for being a cookie monster. And he's like, "You will be able to eat as many cookies as you want because you will be a wife." And I was like, "I can eat as many cookies as I want anyways. I don't need you." Yeah. So yeah, trying to bribe me. So the ride was called Space Mountain. So I thought was interesting, was similar to your experience when you were on this fast moving train to your freedom, is I had never been to any kind of amusement park. And I was sitting, Jatayu was sitting in front of me in the cart. I was in the middle and my mom was behind me, and I was sitting on this ride. And if anybody has ever been on Space Mountain, you'll know what this is like. I mean, you're flying through the dark, literally, and you have no idea where you're going. And I was sitting there in my little cart, scared, because the whole situation was fucked up. My mom had betrayed me at this point. And I was just like so uncomfortable. And there was something that happened on that ride that made me feel so powerful and free. It was pitch black and we're flying at the speed of, night, whatever. And I just remember thinking, I am free. I am free.
And remind me how old you were again? 12?
No, I was 11. And so all this happened in a short kind of period of time. And so when I got off the ride, I was so 100,000% empowered to tell them both to go to hell. We got back to the temple and I said to my mom, "I want you to call me Radhe. I want to eat, or Vanessa, I want to eat meat, and I do not want to be a devotee." And she cried. She cried her eyes out. And at that point, I'd gone to the payphone that was on the temple property, and I called my dad, who was in London. And I had said, "Listen, this is what's happening." I said, "You get me out of here, or I'm running away. I'm out. I'm going to call the police. I know where the police station is. I'm done." So my dad was in a position to get me out of the Alachua temple, and I flew to London, and that was like a whole nother section of the story. But that really, I will always be grateful to my dad for being able to get me out of there. At that point, I would have left no matter what. I would have gone to my grandparents. I would have run away. I would have done 1,000 other things. But that marriage and that situation was never, ever going to happen, or wasn't going to.
You dodged that marriage. Okay, so we're a couple minutes after 5 o'clock, but and we're going to go for a little bit longer. But I know that talking about mothers is more than just a 1 hour. This is the relationship of mother. But I really want to circle back here to your mom, because this is a sensitive spot for me, of how did mothers allow this? Like, I'm still every day blown away by so many mothers' ability to give up their children. And you mentioned something earlier, and you said my mother was a lifelong seeker. Well, I want to know if she found it in ISKCON.
My mom, sadly, here's the thing. No, my mom was such an amazing, creative, freaking genius of a woman. And she was such a mommy when she was in that space. And she also had so much pain that I will never understand that enabled her to do certain things. But I also know that that separating from me and my brother also broke her heart. So I don't think there was nothing easy in her heart. There was always this turmoil in her. And I think that she didn't find, sadly, my mom got cancer and died very young. She was 57. And I think that she just had so much heartbreak on top of heartbreak on top of heartbreak, and didn't know how to access resources to help heal that. It wasn't until she was like a year into her cancer treatment where she really was like ready to go to therapy and ready to deal with things. And I'm so grateful that she was. But it still doesn't take away like the pain that I had to deal with. And the truth is she had so much pain. So as I got older, I started to be able to reconcile, like, my mom didn't not love me. She just had so much of her own stuff that got in the way that her pain was immense. And I'm sad that that happened for her. I hate that that happened for her. And I hate that she acted out in those ways. Before she passed, I asked her, I said, Mom, did you ever really want me? And the truth is I know my mom wanted me. In some ways it was a mean question because I was mad at her for getting cancer. I was fucking mad at her for leaving me again. You know, cancer, her passing felt like her just like leaving me again. You know? And I asked the question because I really needed to understand why she would have tried to marry me. I was like, why did you do that? Because that's not something she would ever actually in her sane mind do. But when you hear her story and understand the pain she was in, then I can say, girl, holy cow. Okay, I get you. It sucks that I was part of that, but like
I can't stretch my brain far enough to imagine how a mother can justify getting their 11-year-old daughter betrothed to a 29-year-old man. It doesn't, there's no math that can make that work.
Well, here's what I've always said. It is just my personality and how I think about things. But in this lifetime, my challenge has been to learn how to grow my forgiveness. This is not bypassing language. I have been through deep therapy. I've been on antidepressant medicine. I have to take Xanax sometimes because I get so freaked out. Like, listen, I'm not a ball of sunshine 24/7 about this. Yes,
you are.
I'm naturally a ball of sunshine, but this world is heavy and it's hard.
Well, sometimes there's clouds or an eclipse or something.
I have learned to stretch my forgiveness beyond anything I ever thought was possible. And I'm good with that. I love that about myself. I love that I can really empathize deeply in someone else's pain. I understand my mom. When you allow and stretch for understanding, that's where I really believe you can forgive someone. It doesn't mean your pain isn't there. It doesn't mean anything was right, but I don't hate her. I'm not going to live that way. And that's been my gift, that I've been able to do that, because it's unimaginable, some of this stuff. But if I were to give in to the despair, I would be dead.
Okay, but that feels like a cop-out too. So in order for me not to die of despair, I'm going to go ahead and let you off the hook for your sins.
Yeah, I don't think it's letting someone off the hook. It's understanding and accepting that her pain was so immense that the decisions she made were self-preservation, was naive, whatever the things were, that both of my parents, not just her, this is both of them, their pain was so deep. And it's one of the things that enabled me to, quote unquote, forgive Lakshmi Moni also, because it was kind of like, whatever pain you have that enables you to treat a person the way you treated them, that's above my pay grade. That's not mine. And bless you, because that pain has to be horrifying. It has to be horrible to live in your body.
I don't know. We need to have a whole episode around.
That's a whole nother one. But I'm just saying that's what it was. Like, I got into a space early on in my childhood where I was like, if you are causing that much pain, you must be in so much pain. And also, karma's a bitch. So like, whatever you're doing, that's going to come back to you, and that's not my responsibility. And I had that thought when I was 11. That's when I forgave Moksharupa, because I was like, whoa. Sorry, I wasn't 11. I was 12 when that happened, because her daughter died. And so that's when I recognized, like, man, karma is so horrible sometimes, and it's going to come get you. If you're a bad person, I'm sorry, it's going to get you.
Sounds like you're
She
forgiving out of
deserved
fear, though.
Huh?
Sounds like you're forgiving out of fear of karma.
No, not at all. It's looking at them saying, like, there are consequences to our actions. There are consequences to abusing children. Whatever caused you to abuse a child, that pain is yours. That's not mine. And I was a victim of that, but I'll deal with mine.
Now you own the consequences of having to repair that for yourself.
And I did. But I'm very self-responsible. Like I'm going to take care of my stuff. They're going to go suffer wherever they're going to suffer. It's not my problem. But I definitely feel that once I tapped into like my mother as a woman, my mother as a human, my mother as someone separate than my mother, if I saw another woman in that kind of pain making those choices, I would say, are you okay? What happened? Where did this come from? I can do that and forgive. And it is part of how I'm built. I don't expect it from somebody else, but it is how I'm built. And it doesn't mean it's easy. And I can still cry, obviously, about things because it's hurtful, but I am not holding on to it. I am okay. And I do forgive her. She doesn't need my anger anymore. I'm okay.
Well, I do want to pick up next week, right where we're leaving off, where you're going to go to England to be with your father. And then we'll talk more about your exit. How was it? Culture shock? Like, what did you do? Did you go to regular school and whatever? And I'm dying to hear all of that. But do you have any final words you want to leave on this?
Yeah. I guess I want to say I've always thought that my stories are my inheritance. My parents are not leaving me with money and all these things. But through my stories or through my parents and through my family, I've been given a lot of experiences. And I don't know where my strength comes from. I don't know where my love comes from. I think my strength comes from my love, right? And I can't imagine growing up as a Carmi. I wouldn't want to relive what I relived, but I can imagine having grown up in the regular world. I'm glad I didn't. And I know that's impossible to understand.
Yeah.
But I know my life wouldn't have been better knowing who my parents are and the situation and the times. And so I'm grateful for growing up in an Indian culture. I'm grateful for having the vocabulary that I have and the friends that I have and the perspective I have on life and being able to take the experiences I've had and actually turn them into something useful, which allows me to work with a lot of women. I can listen and work with women from every angle and perspective and actually have this lived experience to come from.
Yeah, I think self-discovery and you mentioned and it stuck with me that your mom was a seeker, and I'm like, I've met a lot of people like that, and they look everywhere but inside. Yeah. You know, I had a friend who looked who joined multiple temples, not Eastern philosophy, like Jewish temples and churches, Catholic churches, Christian, like didn't match. She's like, well, you know, God's out there somewhere. And I'm like, you're looking everywhere but the inside to who are you? And you're just lost. You're just lost, and you're not going to find it in a church, and you're not going to find it in a Bible. You're going to find it inside. And
I think she ultimately, I think she always knew those things. But she had my mom also had like really deep wisdom, and everybody loved her. You could talk to her. Even she was the first person I would call when I was going through a meltdown. You know, she was the first person. Eventually my mom was my best friend. It was a lot of getting there, but she was my best friend. And there was such wisdom in her, but her confusion was her own. I wasn't the reason she had a hard time. Her existential pangs were very much her own. And Even as we had issues, even as we had arguments, even as I was hurt by her a million times, I still think that she is an incredibly wonderful person who just had all this pain that did not get resolved. And she knew that that love was in her, and that would have been the rest of her journey in her life. It was cut short. But I think my mom would have grown into and been able to alchemize all that pain and all the decisions and been able to really like thrive. And I think that was the hardest part about her death was I know she was just on that threshold. She was just there, and we'd always had this dream of working together and creating like a spa together, not like but a spiritual center, and doing cool work with women and bringing people together. And that freaking sea came and got her, and it cut her life short. So I feel like we would have had a really cool end to our story, but this is what it is. I have my aunts that I get to have part of her with. One of my aunts is on here right now, and my auntie Teresa is here. So yeah, I think that, yeah. So.
Well, we're really grateful for all of you that tune in every week and listen to our stories. One of our friends, Shauna, said that it feels like when she's listening, it feels like group therapy. We've known her since we were 10, whatever, 8. And we really appreciate everybody listening. And it really does feel good to us to have these conversations. It feels energetically very aligned. So I hope you guys are enjoying the content. And it's hard for me not to apologize for my very strong opinions, but I'm trying.
Love your opinions.
Oh, God bless. And we will see you all next week.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here and listening. It's a vulnerable place to be, and it's scary to do this in public like this, but thank you. And we will get to fun stuff later.
We will. We'll get to lots of fun stuff. We got to get through a little bit of rough stuff in the beginning, but you did amazing, Vanessa. I love you so much, and I have a lot of respect for you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for being here.
See you next week.